Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the front door. It is about 7:47, a little early, but tonight I have a guest in the house. His name is Jesse, but you may know him as DJ Threejay. Hey, Jesse, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Good, 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 good. Now, me and you probably have met each other maybe once or twice, or maybe four times, five times in this business, but we don't know each other pretty much. Like, yeah, we're not. I don't have history with you, and you don't have history with me. But
Right.
you come highly recommended from a lot of guys that I've interviewed already. So that's why I'm saying. So just in case the people that are coming on, I tell everybody, please introduce yourself. And if you got any websites, anything that you wanted that's relevant to you, please introduce yourself and tell them who you are.
Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate it, and I think you're correct, 100% correct. I mean, obviously, I think we've crossed paths in the industry that we're in. Obviously, we've done business with a lot of the mutual people. We have relationships with a lot of mutual people. And I think just through word of mouth, hey, Pietro? Yeah, I know Pietro. Oh, yeah. So it's kind of like one of those things, like we know each other from hometown type thing and being in the industry. But yeah, I think you're 100% correct. So yes, my name is Jesse Elizondo. I'm also known as DJ Threejay. A lot of people don't know it, but that was actually a nickname that my parents gave me and my grandparents. Uh, since I'm Jesse Elizondo the third, my grandparents and my parents started calling me 3J when I was a kid, and it stuck forever. And when I started DJing, obviously my dad would and all my cousins and everybody was like, yeah, DJ 3J, man, that's the way to do it. And it just never left.
Nice, 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 nice. So I'm looking at you, and I'm guessing you are a young guy in this industry. No, no, but you're a young guy.
I take a lot of good vitamins.
And so how old are you when you first started DJing? Let's go from there.
I take a lot of, I mean, I'm not afraid to say it. I just turned 40 years old. So yeah, I'm still kind of young. But I've been around a while, and I started really, really, really young. And a lot of people who were there with me when I started know how young I was. I wasn't even old enough to get into the clubs or anything like that.
Okay.
But yeah, I started messing around with turntables and records probably when I was like 10.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
I was lucky enough that my dad was a DJ. His name was Jammin' Jesse. And when he was, obviously, here's a story. When he wasn't around, I was experimenting with the turntables. So at 10 years old, I was putting the needle on the record, and I was breaking needles, and I was doing all kinds of stuff that I was getting in trouble for. And so 10 years old is when I really started messing around with turntables, vinyl, all that other stuff, and starting to get curious about it. Um, and then when I really started getting serious about DJing, was probably it was high school. It was I was probably like 15. I was a sophomore in high school. There's a long but funny, cool story with that. And I remember I had seen Chewy's interview too, and I think Chewy kind of broke it down for me. Broke it down, like how we met and how we started doing parties and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I would say 15, 16 is when I started DJing, like taking it a little bit more serious, because I started playing multiple venues, parties, clubs, and garage parties, basement parties, everything. Um, in the beginning, my dad was a little like, "Hey, dude, where you going?" He'd be home by 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and I'd be like, "Dad, I don't play till like 8:30. I can't be home by 9." But it was a very cool experience. Starting at 15, 16. Uh, when I was playing 15, 16, most of the DJs that I was playing with, man, they were above 18, 20 years old easily. And I was just a kid.
So I'm curious a bit. If your dad was a DJ, and was he one of the house DJs here in Chicago? Was he one of the guys who was basically in the nightclub scene as far as
Yeah.
the
So my dad actually has a lot of history, and a lot of people don't know. You know, obviously like where my roots come from as far as being a DJ and promoter and all that other stuff, right? Sorry, excuse me guys for a minute. So my dad was a DJ probably right out of high school, and I'd say like 16, 17, 18 years old, whatever. I don't know what age he actually started, where he got his own turntables, but he had his own turntables, which was kind of rare back then because turntables were expensive, and unless you were, you know, you had the money and whichever, and then buying a mixer too, you know, there was limited amount of mixers you can get back then, and the really good ones are super expensive, right?
Right.
So yeah, he was he started off playing, you know, house parties and whichever. But he did play in a lot of DJ competitions. I know one that he talks about all the time, and me and Julian joke about it every now and then. Is I guess there was like a turntable battle or something like that. And Julian Jumping Perez was there, and all these other people were there. And he actually has the poster. I remember seeing it when I was a kid. He was hanging up on the wall. It was like a poster of like a volcano, and like all the DJs' names were kind of like falling out the lava, and it was like big like, you know, DJ competition. And I know my dad and my cousins were telling me like, yeah man, your dad, you know, he was like one of the only ones that was scratching, and everybody else was kind of just playing records, and your dad was actually scratching. And then Julian came and he started scratching, and your dad and him were going back and forth. They were, you know, and it was exciting because at that time when I was that young, I didn't really know who Julian German Perez was.
Right.
And you know, I was what, 10 years old, 11 years old, right? And I think it wasn't until like maybe like 12 or 13 when the mix show on B96 got popular.
Right.
And then like Julian German Perez was on, and I was just like, hey, Dad, that is that the guy? And he's like, yeah, that's the guy, you know, that's Julian German Perez, you know. And funny because, you know, me and Julian, we have a good relationship, and we did a lot of business together. And when we first started talking about 10 years ago again, I told him, I said, hey man, you remember my dad? And Julian would kind of just do one of these things and like nod his head and be like, yeah man, your dad is something else about that DJ battle, man. So it's good stuff. But yeah, that's my dad. He
Well, no, that, and the reason why I'm asking about your dad in particular, because if he sees you going and doing this stuff and coming in late on the DJ thing, why would he, like, he would understand, right?
oh yeah, but I think the more so I guess there's a bigger story to that when, you know, when he was more concerned about where I'm going and what I'm doing, right? I was 15 years old, and I
Right.
was DJing, and it was kind of like out of the blue, right? Um, so when I was at school, I was leaving, going to catch the bus, and there was a guy in a parking lot passing out flyers for a party. And I got one of the flyers from a friend who was walking back in the door, and he's like, hey, check this out, man. He goes, there's DJs in the parking lot. And I go, what? So I kind of went out there, and I was just like, what the hell? They're passing out flyers. Read the flyer, check it out. And I started talking to the guy, and the guy was like, hey, why? He goes, you DJ here? And I go, yeah, I DJ. He's like, oh yeah. He goes, you want to play tonight? And I was like DJ tonight, like at a party? He's like, yeah. He's like, come on over, you know, tonight at this party. Here's the address on the flyer right here. He goes, come. He goes, I'll give you a spot. And he gave me like one of like the early slots or whichever. Like he had I don't know, a Jam Master Joe or something like that. I can't remember his name exactly, but he used to have him open up the parties. So when I went home, I told my dad, and I was like, you know, I was already packing up my records, and my dad's. I didn't have headphones at that time. I didn't buy my. These are my dad's, you know.
Right.
So packing up my stuff like it was mine, and he was just like, "Hey, where you going?" I'm like, "Hey, Dad, you know what? I'm gonna go play this party." He's just like, "Oh, wait a minute, where you go? Who you going with?" And I'm like, "Well, this guy's gonna come pick me up. I'm gonna go DJ this party." He's like, "Well, wait a minute, what guy is coming to pick you up?" So at that point, my dad was just like, well, what the hell's going on here, man? Like, you're just coming home, packing up all your stuff, and you're leaving my, you know, my records and my headphones.
Doing exactly what your dad would do is basically
Right. And I was 15, right? I didn't even have a driver's license to get to the party. And, you know, so guy shows up and I'm saying the guy because at that point, I still kind of didn't know who he was. I just knew he was the promoter for the party.
right.
the guy shows up at my house, rings the doorbell. My dad goes and meets him at the door, and they're talking and they're laughing and whichever. I'm like, okay, this is good. So I go out there and I told my dad, and my dad's like, yeah. He goes, don't worry about it. He goes, you're okay. He goes, enjoy the party, whatever. Make sure you keep an eye on your records. Nobody steals them, all that stuff. I'll wait up for you tonight. He's like, Johnny's gonna bring you home. And I was like, oh, hey, Johnny. I seen the guy and I shook his hand. I didn't even know his name. I was like, oh, Johnny, you know, my dad said his name because I didn't know who he was. So I learned that was Johnny Wildboy. Johnny Wildboy B, from the Hot Mix 5, one of the originals, was throwing parties when he had, you know, at that time. And he was the guy that picked me up. And I guess him and my dad kind of knew each other. So my dad was a little more accepting then. He was kind of like, okay, you know what? He's going with an adult. He's going to a party. The guy's going to bring him back home. Okay, you know what? We'll let this one fly. So I went, and, you know, it was obviously I was nervous. Didn't know what the hell was going on. You know, I'm there. There's kids from all these high schools and these big ass speakers, and, you know, hey, go on. You can go on now and play, you know, play for a half hour, 45 minutes or whatever. I didn't even know who was on the bill. I didn't pay attention. You know, I didn't know who was coming, who was going, who I'm sharing the turntables with. They just said, hey, get on the decks and play. All right, cool. So I started whipping through records, you know, here and there or whatever. I seen a couple friends from other schools and stuff. And they were like, man, hey, you know, it was cool. Like all my friends. Then at that point, it was like I had a crowd around me of kids, you know, and they were like, yeah, man, I go to school with this guy. You know, I go to school with him. You know, I know his brother. I know his cousin. And it was exciting, but I was nervous. I mean, my hands were shaking. And, you know, obviously when you play records and stuff and you're using a needle, you get a little toothpick of a needle to hold on to. And I was trying to hold on to it to put the record on because I was shaking so much.
Right.
I was nervous. So if that wasn't nerve-wracking enough.
Jesse, give me 1 second. I'll be right back because like I'm looked at this battery, this plug is really fragile, and I see that I'm not fully charged. So let me go plug it in. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Cool.
Right.
Cool.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
All right, go ahead.
So let's see where we leave off. So I'm DJing, whipping these records, whichever. I don't know who's on the bill. All my friends are there. You know, I'm seeing these people from high school and other, you know, acquaintances and whichever that I've known, and you know, I was nervous. I didn't know, you know, who I was sharing the turntables with. You know, anybody came to me and say, "Hey, man, it's my turn." I would have been like, "Yeah, all right, cool." You know, I don't know. You know, this is my first party I ever played. This guy comes in, and he's got a nice coat on. I think it was like I want to say it was like almost like a mink coat, or like a real puffy, like, you know, mink coat, or like a fur or something, right? Sunglasses on and whatever. And I was just like, man, who is this guy? You know, yeah. And Johnny Wildboy was like, hey, Threejay. He's like, yo, man. He goes, Bad Boy Bill's gonna get on right now. He goes, just play one more record and Bad Boy Bill's gonna get on. And I was just like, holy shit, man, that's Bad Boy Bill. Like, wow, hey, there's Bad Boy Bill. And at that point, I was like, man, I've heard him on the radio and stuff. And at that point, I'm like, all right, I play one more record and I got the hell out the way. I got my stuff, and I was just like, and then at that point, I'm the guy sitting on my records, you know, watching this guy record for record. And I was just like, wow, I heard this guy on the radio. He's actually pretty good. You know, and then obviously it just grew from there. I mean, one party to another, so on and so forth.
Right. So that you're now 15 years old. What happens after that? After you're 15 years old, playing for this not planned party.
Yeah. I think from there, it was just pure craziness, because I think I got a lot of attention from a lot of people, like friends and family, my dad, you know, everything. And because Johnny Wildboy was throwing parties all over the place, like every other weekend. So I was playing, every other weekend at these parties. And, I was like, hey, man, look, man, that's my name on the flyer. So, I had my name on the flyers. I was passing out flyers. And my dad was excited. He was like, hey, man, this is cool. Keep doing it. Make sure you keep practicing. And, whichever. I would go home from school and practice my records every day and try different blends and make sure they were on cue and so on and so forth. And one of my uncles was talking to my dad one day, and they had all this like speaker equipment because they used to do mobile DJ stuff, right?
Okay.
And I think we were like watching a Bulls game or something like that. It was something crazy. We were doing pizza in the Bulls game or whichever. I mean, who wasn't watching the Bulls in the 90s, right? And my uncle was like, hey, you're playing all these parties. You think you can get your friends to come to a party if, you DJ and maybe a couple other guys? And I was like, yeah, well, let's try it. Why not? Let's give it a shot.
Where was this at, though?
So
was this in your backyard? Watching the Bull?
The first party I think that we did was at Polish Highlanders on Archer Avenue.
Okay.
So we did Polish Highlanders, Archer Avenue. It was, I think I wanted to say it was like me, Abel Cortez, and a couple because obviously my dad knew all the other DJs, like the old school DJs, right? So he threw a couple of those guys on there. I put a couple of my friends on there. And, we do this party at Polish Highlanders. It did okay. We did probably like maybe 200, 300 people. It was all right. I mean, the Highlanders, if you've ever been there, they could hold at least 800 people in there on a good night, standing room.
Right.
So we did okay, and my dad and my uncle were kind of excited. They were like, man, this is a good thing, let's do another one. And they went out and bought more equipment. They bought bigger speakers and they bought more lights and whichever. All right, cool. We did another one. And it did the same thing, probably about 200-300 people. Well, I guess we realized that the overhead that we were paying for the Polish Highlanders was a lot of money. And, obviously, if we were going to stay consistent with 200-300 people, if we wanted to make money, we got to start figuring out a way to, cut costs a little bit.
Right.
So somehow, I don't even know how we landed this, but there's a church over on 38th and California. It's called Our Lady of Fatima. They have a basement gym there, and it's humongous. Like you can put probably 1,500.
Wow.
Maybe you could probably even smash. Well, you could put 1,500 in there smashed for sure, because I put 800 in there, 1,000 people in there at one time, and it was pretty packed. And I made it. I did a lot of parties there. So we had met the father, and he had this gym that wasn't being used, and it was literally off of California. It was down the stairs, maybe about it was down there. It was probably about maybe 20 steps down. So it was about a floor or two down in the basement. And we told the father, hey, I'm throwing these parties, a lot of high school kids, so on and so forth. We have security. And my dad worked it all out. And what we were doing is we were giving a portion of the proceeds that we were making to the church.
Correct.
So first party we did there, we did the same thing, like I said, 200-300 people, whichever. And we gave a portion to the church. Father was happy. He was excited. He was like, hey man, this is cool. This is better than the church donations. He's like, let's do another one. I'm like, I'm standing there. I'm like, man, this guy sounds like my dad. He says, my dad made a little bit of money. He said, let's have another one. We give the donation to the father, and the father says, hey, let's do another one. And at that point, I was starting to feel a little overwhelmed, because at the same time I was playing all these parties, my dad was throwing these parties with my uncle, with me. And, we were, I needed help. That's what I needed. We needed help. I needed people to pass out flyers. And I want to say one day when my friends came over, and my dad was like, hey man, why don't you pass out these flyers, help Threejay out, whichever. I'm not kidding you. I must have had about 20 or 30 kids, like soldiers at high schools, passing out flyers, like in the next week or two. And our next party, we had doubled. We had 500 people.
Nice, nice.
And then we were like, oh, wow. And obviously, the father was like, donation got even better. So he was like, let's do another one. And they were like, all right, hey, let's do another one, right? So then we were like, let's do Gino Rock and Romo. Let's kick it up a little bit. Let's do, and mind you, I'm 16. I'm probably 16 years old now. This is about a year in the making of doing parties there. 16 years old, I was already booking people like Gino Rock and Romo, Bobby D, Bad Boy Bill. I was calling all these guys, trying to get their numbers, calling the radio station. Hey, can I get these numbers so I can book them? And they were like, man, who are you, kid? And I was booking all these guys to come and play, and the parties got bigger, and there was sometimes we had a party and there were, was a little bit, less of a turnout, but then we had some that were just completely jam packed. And that's actually where I met Spin and Chewy.
Okay.
Oh, Gino Rock and Romo, I think it was a couple of things. Me and Chewy were talking about this. So I had met Spin and Chewy through Gino Rock and Romo, but also Chewy went to school with one of my friend's brothers. And my friend's brother was passing out flyers. So Chewy was like, hey, man, my cousin's going to spin there, Gino Rock and Romo. I'm going to be at the party. So they came and we kind of met there. And then I liked Chewy. Chewy off the bat was, his energy was good kid. He played the decks real smooth. His blends were good. And we were the same age. And he was at De La Salle. I was at St. Lawrence. And, we kind of just connected and we started like calling each other. Hey, what do you think? We should book this person. We should do this. Let's throw this party together. Yeah. And then me and Chewy were kind of like doing stuff on our own. We were throwing like parties in garages and stuff. Like, hey, so-and-so's going to have a garage. Yeah, let's throw a party in the garage, man. We're $5 a person. Let's do it. We were just doing, all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, I mean, it grew really fast for me from the age of 15 to 17 in 2 year span. I want to say that it grew a lot. And I have to say that I'm very thankful for the opportunity to learn as much as I did that fast and have so many people support me, because all my friends are really, why I made it, because they wanted to see me DJ these parties. All my friends were passing out flyers with my name on it for my parties because they wanted to see the parties happen. And it wasn't just me, it was everybody who helped me make things happen.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, from there, how long is the show? I mean, I can keep going. I mean, I guess so. The parties at Lydia Fatima were good, and we had a great time doing them.
So I mean, so you were now, because you were booking, you were basically DJ / promoter more so than just a DJ, right?
Right.
And you were and basically, because I mean, obviously your name will go on the flyer or go on the event, and it was kind of you were doing a dual purpose, doing a promoter and a DJ, and getting all these guys, Bad Boy Bill, you said, Gino Rock and Romo, and because you were on the southwest side of Chicago, it was kind of house freestyle, and I'm guessing with the that all the alternatives, the music and everything else that was happening on that, because this is 1995, correct? This is about when this is happening.
So that's so I'm gonna elaborate a little bit more about these parties. So 1995, 96, 97, when my popularity started growing, one as a promoter for throwing these parties, and two for being a DJ, things changed with everybody. And a lot of people then were kind of like interested. And it was really weird for me, because I didn't really know how to respond to it, I guess.
All right.
So just like you said, there were alternative parties, underground parties. There were old school parties, hip hop parties. I have to say the 90s was a great era. there were tons of parties. You can go to the north side to a hip hop party or an old school party, or the south side to an old school party. There were a lot of different parties happening in the 90s, and the genres of music were just so strong. And the cool part is I had friends in every party scene.
Right.
I went to high school with a lot of the guys who were doing the alternative parties. And they were like, "Oh, you do those parties? Yeah, I do those parties. Hey, you know what? Hey, we should throw a party together, man. We put some of your parties." And then we kind of like collaborated a little bit. And then, you know, some of those DJs would play my parties and we would trade. And then, you know, I'll say this publicly. In the 90s, I was big on graffiti. I loved doing graffiti. You know, I love writing my name on the wall, on the bus and the train and whatever. And I had a lot of graffiti friends, and a lot of those guys were hip hop guys. And then those guys were like, "Hey, well, we play house too, man. You know, we'll play a party for you." And then they were like, "Hey, we're throwing a hip hop party. Come play." So I was kind of like getting a diverse, you know, a diverse opportunity to work with a lot of different people and throw
Right.
parties with a lot of different people, which was really cool. And my hip hop guy was DJ Noble. You know, DJ
Okay.
Noble's my guy. When we went to high school together, I grew up with his brothers, and we have a really strong relationship. And we were graffiti brothers, you know. But then, you know, he was the first guy that I sat in the studio with that was making hip hop. And I would sit there, and then he would be like, "Yo, Threejay, go up there and bust the scratch, man." And I would be like, "Man, this is hip hop. And they want me to bust the house scratch over the hip hop? Man, I don't." And it was funny because Seal would be there, and you know, all the guys, you know, like the TMS guys, and that kind of turned me on to wanting to buy like an MPC and, you know, make music.
Right.
But then you know, graffiti, I met DJ7 from Disco Pimps. We were graffiti brothers too, and Seven was playing a lot of my parties, and Seven introduced me to the underground, the real underground,
Right.
the raves, the 90s raves, the warehouse parties, all that stuff. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And then with the
Because that was a different scene altogether. That was not, you know, that was a huge scene.
entirely different world.
Yep.
That I have no idea that it even existed. And so it's just, you know, before we jump into the underground part and how I kind of left the, you know, the commercial, a little bit more commercial stuff. So I did some alternative parties with some guys from school. They did well. We did like an alternative / underground type thing or whichever. They did well. I did some parties with Noble. I did some parties with some of the underground guys with Disco Pimps. And I was kind of just like, I was having fun, man. I was playing parties. I was, you know, throwing parties everywhere. So 1996, 1997. In the middle of all this, with me and DJ7, he hung out with my boy Guido. Guido was also a graffiti writer. So me and Guido were really good friends, and me and Guido hung out every day. And he introduced me to Rick, which is Seven. So DJ7 and him, one day they come to my house and they're saying, you know, we're going to a party, whichever. And I'm like, "Hey, I want to go to the party." And they're like, "No, you can't come to this party. You're too young." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they were, at that time, Guido was like probably 18, 19, and I was still 16, 17. And then Rick was probably in his 20s, early 20s, around there. He was early 20s. And they were like, "No, you can't come to this party, man. You can't come. No, this party you can't come to." And I was just like, "No." I'm like, "Oh, ask my dad. I'll come to this party. I'll tell him I'll come with you guys." So my dad came out and he was like, "Oh, you know, you're gonna go to a party with him, whatever." And my Guido and my friend Guido and Seven were kind of like, they had their heads down, kind of like, "Yeah, we're going to a party, you know, but we're not gonna come home early. You know, we're gonna come home really late." And my dad was like, "Well, how late?" And Rick was like 5 a.m. And he just like spit it out. And my dad was just like, 5 a.m. He's like, "Where you guys going?" were you driving like Wisconsin or what are you guys, what are you guys doing? And Guido was like, yeah, it's it's a different type of party. It's like an underground party. He's like, you got to get an invite to go though. You got to know what where to go and all this other stuff. And I was excited even more. Like I was just like,
well, that's like telling somebody, don't put your hand in a cookie jar and you're gonna be like,
right. I was kind of like, this sounds exciting. Like I want to see what's going on here. What do you mean you got to get an invite and stuff? Like this sounds exciting, right? And they were nervous. Rick and my boy Guido were legit nervous because my dad had said, yeah, he can go, but you guys are responsible for him. I want him home when you get home. Don't leave him at the party. He comes home with you, so on and so forth. Now I'm 16 years old going to an underground party that ends at like 5-6 o'clock in the morning. And I think about it now. I have kids now. And I'm thinking to myself, like, now, would I let my kid go to it? I'm like, a discussion we have all the time. I did a lot of stuff, and my parents let me do a lot of good stuff because I was a good kid. And they let me get away with a lot because I was a good kid. But, this
you
whole
were
thing,
here, you were at St. Lawrence, right? Come on, you're a good
right?
kid.
I mean,
so
my dad, I guess my dad was cool enough where he understood I was already involved with the industry.
well, I mean, I went to De La Salle when I was 15 years old, and here I was DJing at a 21 and over club. And as long as I had good grades, I think parents will kind of forgive that fact. They say, okay, you know what? He wants to be a DJ, he wants to be in the music and stuff like that. But if you have good grades, I mean, if you're let's say a C average student, then that'll be something different. But if you had like really, you're and I'm sure at your high school you had some really good grades. So I'm guessing that you were responsible academically. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, so that's gonna make your dad a little bit easier on the fact that, okay, you know what, he wants to go. Okay, let him experience something. It's can't keep
Yeah.
you locked in and tell you, all right, you can't have a girlfriend. That's it.
right. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like and you're right. My parents were strict on me because academically I had to be on point, or else there was no DJing, there was no parties, there was no going out, hanging out, and whatever. And in my opinion, that's old school bringing up, and that's kind of how I bring up my kids. It's the same thing. You gotta be responsible when it comes to academic. But yeah, so fast forward, I jump in the car with these guys. Now, mind you, I jump in the car with these guys and they're like, hey man, this party, are you sure you want to go? Like, this party's different. There's a lot of different people there. And they're kind of weirding me out. Like, well, what the fuck kind of people are there, man? Where are we going? They're like, is this for real? And they're like, yeah. They're like, hey, it's going to be like at least 20 or 30 bucks to get in. I'm like, 20 or $30 to get in. I'm like, I got like 10 bucks. I ran back in the house and told my dad, I said, Dad, I need like 40 bucks. He's like, for what? I go, I got to get in the party. I got to pay. He's like, $40 to get into the party? I'm like, well, he said it might be 20 or 30. I got 10. I go, in case we stop and get something to eat, we, obviously we went to Huck Finn after one, right? So
Of course.
my dad flipped me 40 bucks. And he wasn't happy about it, but he flipped me 40 bucks. So I go to this party, and sure enough, man, we drove about an hour. It was the Photon Expo Center, Harvey, Illinois.
And do you remember who threw the party?
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say it was Frankie Vega with Mushgroove.
Yes.
I want to say it was Frankie Vega with Mushgroove, and I want to say it was one of the first hardcore Chicago parties, but I'm not definite because obviously I didn't know anything at that point.
I think he was working at Gramophones at the time. I think that's where he was. That's where I knew him from.
Yeah,
he was working at Gramophones. Yeah.
So we drive an hour. We get there. Sure enough, I paid 20 bucks to get in this party. Now I'm thinking to myself, what kind of club is this? Whatever. I get in there. It's a little different, but you talk about like the parties where I was going, what I was doing with these high school kids and these, the Southside parties. And then I stepped into the door of these underground parties. It was like I walked into a completely different world. I mean, the sound system was 10 times bigger. The lights were just amazing. You're talking about like lasers. You're talking about, intelligent lighting. You're talking about, glow in the dark stuff. I mean,
like the scene from Blade when they walked into the underground club and Blade.
almost exact.
Yeah.
And, I was in awe. I mean, I was probably like holding their hands because I was like looking around like, wow, man, what is this? And it was packed. I mean, there was probably like, 1,500, 2,000 people in there. It was so packed. It was probably about 100 degrees in there. It was packed to the gills, and I'm walking around like trying to keep up with them, walking through crowds so I don't get lost. And I heard the music, but I didn't know any of it. I did not know anything they were playing, and I'll be 100% honest. Probably about 2 hours into the party, I had met Paul Johnson. Didn't know who he was, no nothing like that. And I got introduced to him by DJ 7. And they were, and the thing is that DJ 7 and Guido were telling all these people, yeah, this is Threejay, man. He throws parties too. And I'm thinking, like, man, who the hell are these people? I don't know who these people are. Like, I don't throw these kind of parties. What is this? I don't throw these kind of parties. And they were introducing me to everybody though, and I thought it was, I had met Frankie Vega. And I had seen Frankie Vega before, so I didn't know he did parties though.
Right.
And I'm sitting there, and the only song that I had heard that I knew was Joey Beltram's Energy Flash. And when Joey Beltram Energy Flash came on, I was like excited. I'm like, dude, this song is badass. I haven't heard this song for a while. And who's playing it and whatever. You couldn't even find a DJ in the place. Like, I didn't even know where the DJ was. And 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever, we left, went to Huck Finn. And of course, I'm in the clouds, man. I was like pumped. Like, I was just like, this was the greatest experience ever. This is the best party, whatever. And went home, and I told my dad about it. And my dad was like, how many people were there? I go, Dad, there must have been freaking 2,000 people in this place. I'm like, Dad, I'm telling you, there was people all over. He's like, where the hell did you guys? I go, I don't know. I'm like, but wherever we went, it was at least an hour away. I said, we drove forever. And he's like, no way. So my friends came over, and he's like, where'd you take them? Where'd you guys go? And he's like, oh, the party was in Harvey or whatever. Right. You took all the way to Harvey? And of course, my dad then was a little bit more excited. Like, I didn't think you guys are going halfway across the border of Illinois to go to this place, And
but your dad didn't even know about the underground parties either. So
no,
that's
no, he had no idea.
Right.
So I had told him about it, and I told him, I said, Dad, I said, everything was just so much bigger. I said, the freaking sound system was like a concert. I'm like, the lights, the people, I'm like, the music. I'm like, it was, crazy. I go, I want to go again. He's just like, yeah, all right, cool, you can go again. He goes, as long as you don't get in no trouble, whatever, you can go again. So when my friend came over, my dad was asking questions. Where did you guys go? Whatever. So I went to another party with him, and I started digging it. Like, I started listening to more. I was listening to techno. I was listening to some jungle, and I was learning. I was just like, wow, this is a different world. Like, I don't hear this stuff on the radio. Where they get these records from? Where were they buying this stuff at? I go to Hot Jams. They don't tell me this.
Nope.
I go there. I buy all the UC stuff. I buy all the, all the hard house stuff, and I buy all the, I buy all the Italian disco and shit like that. I buy all that stuff. Where you guys buying these records from, man? Where you going? And Rick had turned me on to. He's like, come on, man, let's go record shop. We go to Gramophone, and we go to Hot Jam. And he started showing me different places to pick out records, and check this out and check that out. And I'll be honest, Rick was the first guy who was like a big brother to me, and literally was like, hey man, you know what, I went over to his house, and he gave me a stack of records. And he's like, "Here, these are all old records." He goes, "But they're underground records." He goes, "Try them out, check them out, play them, and if you like them, whatever, see which ones you like, and we'll try and find you more or whatever. We'll go shopping, we'll buy some more." And he gave me like techno house. He gave me everything, just a big pile of records. So I went home, I was playing these records, and didn't know who any of them were. I didn't know who the record labels were. I didn't know nothing, because at that point, I was still a kid, and I was playing all the popular stuff. I was playing the UC stuff. I was playing all the commercial stuff that I was hearing off the radio.
Right.
And this was a complete different world. And I ran into Frankie Vega at Hot Jams. Frankie Vega, I told him, I said, "Hey, Frankie, man, I want to buy some of those records, like those DJs were playing over there." And then Dr. Gru was working there. Ben, he was working there, and Brian was working there, Phantom 45. And Rick was friends with those guys, 7. And then, those guys, he kind of introduced me to them. They started selling me records, that, underground records.
I was trying to come up with a guy's name that was doing all the underground part. That was Louis Barrio.
Louis Barrow.
Louis Barrio, yes.
Yeah, Louis Barrow. Yeah, good friend of mine too. Great guy.
That was the one that he kind of forefronted underground events.
At one point, man, he was the guy. He was the guy. In the late '90s for sure. I have to respect him 110%. Like I said, I was a kid, and these guys were adults, and they accepted me, and they kind of let me they kind of let me in. Because the underground at that time was a really tight-knit scene.
Oh, I agree, because the way I know Louis Barrio was through actually Luis Ramirez.
Right.
That's how I knew Louis Barrio, and they would invite me always to these events, but I was doing my thing, which was the Latin aspect of it, what I was doing, and so obviously I was like, okay, I can't make it. I'm doing Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, DJing Sunday, 5 nights a week. So, but I would run probably into Lewis more so. I'd run into him because he would be putting up these posters at all the places that I was selling my mixtapes at. So that was the only place. Or when I go see Lewis and Ziggy, or Lewis and Leon, he was, "Hey man, this is Louis Barrio," and then then every so often I walk into Hot Jams, obviously, and then I would see Frankie. And that was where I was like, "Oh man, this is a totally different world." And I remember the whole mushroom, marketing promotion. So I remember that was the scene, and it wasn't my scene, obviously, but I knew it was. They used to tell me the stories about out in the cornfields.
Yeah. It was, so for the first year I was kind of still experiencing the underground. And it was a little weird for me because I was gaining popularity in my own neighborhood and friends and high school and all these parties. And as soon as I went to these underground parties, man, I was like, all those other parties I was doing was in the back. Like I wasn't even interested in those things anymore. I didn't even care about going to them. And my friends were like, "Hey, you gonna be at this party?" I'm like, "Nope." They're like, "Oh, where you going?" I'm like, "Going to a different kind of party." I was just like, "I'm going." Right. "What kind of party is it?" "Oh, it's a different kind of party, man." "Oh yeah, can we go?" "No, you can't go, man. I don't even have the info. My friend has the info."
The way they used to send out the parties, I know. It was.
And I mean, I wasn't being a jerk. I was legit telling them, like, I don't even have the info. Like, I gotta wait till Friday or Saturday when Rick or Seven or somebody else, one of the guys, gets the phone number to call so that we can get the address and go to the party. And my friends didn't understand that. That was just like, that was another dimension for them. They're like, "Man, you're freaking lying, man. You just don't want us to come to the party." I'm like, I'm telling you for real, man. And they're like, "What kind of party is it? Is it like one of those sex parties?" So no. This ain't, no. I go, no. I'm telling you, man. I go, but these parties that we go to on the weekends, they're way bigger than the ones we have. And they were like, "For real?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm being for real, man." And
well, I mean, like, I remember the lineups that they had. They were like 17 DJs, and they would it was huge lineups. It wasn't like you had your 4 and then 2 other guys. No, man, you remember it was like 60 names on these parties and something. Like it was a big deal.
They were just massive. And I'd say for the first year I was kind of getting my feet wet, and I was kind of transitioning from like doing the parties of high school, whichever. And it was a little hard for me to deal with, because a lot of my friends and a lot of people who were attending my parties were kind of like, what happened?
They felt abandoned.
Right. Hey, how come you're not throwing these kind of parties anymore? How come you're not DJing these parties anymore? And I had dancers that would dance for me on stage. These girls, they would be like, where you going? I'm like, I'm going to a different kind of party. And they'd be like, what, an underground party? Like, yeah, no, we're not going to no underground party. And be like, well, I'm going.
Jesse, the same thing happened to me when I transitioned over to vinyl to do Latin. The exact same thing would be that, and trust me, I had a lot of guys on the South Side, a lot of South Side DJs. I heard from them the negative aspect of it. Me go, oh, why are you going to the North Side? What? We're not good enough anymore. I mean, trust me. I'm doing Tropicana. I'm doing the Latin stuff. So they would be. I mean, and let's some of your friends can not mix words very kindly and say something like, oh yeah, you think you're better than us. Oh yeah, And I remember that, or they would say it to friends of our friends, and we were like, what? What did they say about me?
Yeah, I mean, and it was weird for me, because these underground parties, not everybody went to them, not everybody knew about them, not everybody understood them. So for me to tell people that I was going to like an elitist type of a party, and they couldn't go, or they couldn't whatever, they were kind of like, well, what the fuck? Why not? You better than me? Or like, how do we go to? And it was just like, and I was just like, hey man, I get invited. Like, I'm not throwing these parties. I got no say so. These guys come pick me up and we go to the party. I don't even know the phone numbers. I can't.
What part of this does it become that you start DJing it? When do you start becoming a DJ at these parties?
It started as a promoter again. Okay. So we go to these parties. I got comfortable, really liked them. My dad was like, you want to throw one? And at that point I was like, nah, these guys are on another level. Like, I can't do that. And they were spending, at that time they were spending like $5,000 on flyers. They were printing up 50,000, 100,000 flyers. And we're talking about real flyers back in the day, 8.5 by 11 full page, 11 by 17.
They were very intricate. They were very, they weren't just the regular. No, they weren't the regular 4x6 flyers. No, they had to be
talking about
so different.
Professional printed flyers, raised ink, metallic ink, 3 folds, die cut.
Die cut.
Hey, I could sell flyers because I know so much about them from the 90s and how we used to print them. 15-point paper, glossy, one side, 4/4. I mean, when I got introduced to that part of it, and then having to pay a designer separate, I mean, you needed some real money. And I was kind of like learning, and I was just like, wow, man. And people would stand at these parties with boxes and boxes and boxes of flyers, boom, just pumping them out to people. And I was like, damn, man, that's a lot of flyers you're passing out, And so 7 was like, yo, let's throw a party. Let's do it. Let's throw a party. At that point, I was hanging out with DJ 7, my boy Guido, and then we had the Disco Pimps kids, the Disco Pimps. And the Disco Pimps was DJ 7, Kevin Durkin, Ryan, and for a short period of time, John Break It Down, John Simmons. John Simmons went to Brother Rice, and I met him because I went to St. Lawrence and I went to go play Brother Rice Mixer. They used to throw little mixers on Fridays where they used to have DJs in there and they used to have kids come to parties. Well, I had met John Break It Down that way and through Seven. And it was kind of like a circle, you know, I mean, Chewy was playing those same parties, you know,
Right.
and we were just crossing paths. And well, me, Seven, and John Break It Down would hang out all the time. You know, we were the original, you know, some of the original disco pimps. And we sat down and said, yo, let's throw a party together. Me, DJ Threejay, DJ Seven, and John Break It Down Simmons. Let's throw a party, disco pimps. And they were like, yo, Threejay, man, well, Threejay, we need a venue. We need a big venue to throw this party at, man. And I was like, I got one, man. Let's go back to Lady Fatima. We'll go there, man. Nobody's used it. Nobody's used it. Let's go use it. And they were like, yeah, man, that's a big place and ain't nobody used it. Let's throw an underground there. And they were like, well, do you think we can go to 5 o'clock in the morning? I go, oh, man, I don't know about that. We usually end at like 10 or 11 with the other parties. And I was like, I could ask my dad. And I asked my dad and I told him, I said, hey, look, we're talking about we want to throw a party. You know, we need a little bit of money and we need to, you know, book this, Our Lady of Fatima again to throw this party. Let's try it there. And I go, but the party's dad, I said, the party's got to go to at least 5 o'clock in the morning. My dad's just like, you're crazy. He's like, there's no way the father's going to let us have that place to 5 o'clock in the morning. I go, all right, well, let's look for another place. Then my dad said, you know what? Hey, you know what? Let's try it.
Let's ask.
Let's ask, right? Let's try it. So we told the father and said, hey, we want to do a party here again. He's like, yeah. You know, at that point, he was totally accepting and he was open arms to throwing a party again because he loved the donations. He loved that we were
Right.
helping him. And we told him, my father, you know, this one's going to be a little bit later, though. This is going to be, you know, maybe midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, you know. He's like, yeah, that's fine. You know, you guys have been excellent. You know, that's fine. You know, we'll just make sure you guys clean up and you guys, you know, make sure you lock the doors and all this other stuff. And we had the keys. We had the keys to the place.
Right.
So we threw the party. Me, John Break It Down, Seven. We even went to the extent call us nerds, right? First party we're throwing, we come up with the lineup and we put ourselves on there. DJ Seven, DJ Threejay, John Break It Down, Phantom 45, Danny the Wild Child, Jeff Starlight. I can't even remember who else we had on the lineup, but it was our first party together. And we busted out. I think it was just like 1,200 people. First time around, we had 1,200 people come through, and we did it at a discount. We did the party for like, I think it was $8 if you bought a Dr. Pepper soda, because the initials for Dr. Pepper were DP, just like Disco Pimps. And we had no idea that we were going to get that many people.
So or that many Dr. Peppers.
Oh man, that was the funny part. So 1,200 people brought a Dr. Pepper. We had garbage cans full of Dr. Peppers. And we didn't know what to do with all the soda. Like, we were at the end of the party, John Simmons was like, I'll take like a case, man. And Rick was like, I'll take a case. And they're like, what the hell are we gonna do? Went to the father and said, hey, father, you know what? We had a party. These kids, it was a discount. They brought a soda. You know, here's your donation. And you guys want to keep this soda for the kids or something like that? He's like, yeah, man, that's great. You know, we gave all the freaking soda. And I mean, it was bananas. And, you know, he never said anything about us being till 5 o'clock in the morning. And
did he know though? Did he know?
No. And he lived there too. He lived like, it was where he lived was like half a block down the way. So he didn't know that we were there till 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And, you know, we were excited. We pulled it off. We were like, oh yeah, let's throw another one. And we did. And then down the line, I think all of us had different ideas and different intentions on how we wanted things to play out. And John Simmons branched off and he started Underground Revolution at the time. Right. And I was still really good friends with John, and I helped him out with the party. We were partners on the party. And I was part of Underground Revolution at the time. We did Underground Revolution at Our Lady of Fatima. Right. And that party was with DJ Jess, Hyperactive, and a whole bunch of others. And, you know, that party went off really well too. That party did another probably like 1,200 people. And at that point, we were like, man, we got something here. Like, we're doing it. You know, we're kids and we're doing this thing. And, you know, here we are, not even graduated from high school yet, and we're throwing big boy parties. And, you know, 7 branched off and was doing disco pimp parties. And I kind of felt like in the middle, you know, 7 wanted to do his own thing. John wanted to do his own thing. And, you know, I was talking to John one day and he's just like, yo, man, why don't you do like a brother crew in between Disco Pimps and Underground Revolution? So you could just do your own thing and not have to want to consult with us, you know, do it as a group thing. He's like, and then maybe when we want to do a group thing, we just do a group thing, you know, Underground Revolution, Disco Pimps, whatever. So I was stuck on a name. I'm like, well, what do? I can't do my original promotion name for my high school parties was VIP Productions. And I didn't want to do that. It wasn't fitting. And it wasn't what I wanted to do. And we came up with it where John was like, what about Underground Element? And I was just like, yeah, that's cool. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I'm Underground Revolution. You could be Underground Element. He's like, and we'll spell it the same, underground with an A, UNDA, Underground Revolution and Underground Element. He's like, and this way we can introduce it as a partner. You know, we're friends.
Somewhere there, later down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right.
I think there could be a collaboration somehow, you know, down the line where this is how we would do it. And I was just like, yeah, you know what, that's cool. I like that. So I had to figure out a logo, all the other stuff. It got harder because then John was doing his own thing, Rick was doing his own thing, and then I was 100% on my own. And then it was like, well, damn, I got to call and figure out these DJs on my own. I got to figure out my own place again. I was starting from scratch all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I threw parties all over the South Side then. Then it was like, people were like, yo, man, who's this kid throwing these parties in all these illegal places, like these warehouses? The Brighton Theater was shut down for, I think, what was like almost 20 years, 10 years. And then all of a sudden, 2 o'clock in the morning, you see 1,000 people in line to get into Brighton Theater on Archer Avenue on the South Side. And people were like, man, I thought that place was abandoned. And we had just so happened to meet the people who owned it. And we made deals with them and said, hey, let's throw some parties in here. And we did. You know, I did parties like Hyperactive CGR. I did everybody. And then, you know, everybody was kind of like, yo, man, Threejay's, he's the guy. He's doing underground parties now. Like he's doing underground stuff. And it was so weird because like there were a lot of the guys like that were from the, you know, the commercial scene, and were like, man, we want to play those parties too. You know, I was friends with like Dino Latino, and I was friends with Law, the group Law, and you know, which I was legit really good friends with those guys. Lázaro, you know, Laz,
Mm-hmm.
really good friends with those guys, and they were like, they wanted into the underground scene too. And then I didn't realize
you also had a huge clientele for exposure, so that was a big part for them. I mean, let's be honest, any artist slash DJ, you know, you could go to any nightclub or lounge, and you're lucky if you get like 400, 300 people in the lounge or something like that. But here you're doing these underground parties, and you got 2,500, 3,000 kids at one point. So of course that they're gonna be like, you know what, I want in.
yeah. And it was hard for me because I had spent time learning what the difference was and what, you know, needed to be done to have successful parties in the underground, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that these people in the, you know, the scene that I was promoting before wouldn't be successful. I had to like sneak them in. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like I can go cold turkey and just throw all my friends in there and just hope it's going to happen.
Right.
It's completely 2 different worlds, right?
Correct.
And I did. I did let a couple people in here and there. I would sneak one person in and this and that, and it became a format for me. I let one of my friends
so when
in.
you say sneak somebody in, let me make sure that we get this right. So you got all these underground DJs, and then you would sneak in a Julian Jumper Perez, like
something like
that.
something like that.
Even though he was popular in his realm, but I mean, he was Julian Perez wasn't an underground DJ. So you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, so
that's what
I'll give you a perfect example. Like I would book Paul Johnson, Hyperactive, Danny the Wild Child, and then I book like DJ Reich to open up.
Yeah,
and then Reich would be excited because he'd be like, yo, I'm playing a rave. And then I'd be like, yo, Reich, but I need you to open because, but Reich would come and these guys would come and play. They would be prepared. They had all the underground cuts, so they weren't coming there trying to play, alternative music.
Right.
They literally were prepared and they came with the underground cuts, and they were like, yo, I can play these raves. And, it was cool because I gave them the opportunity to say, hey, here's a little bit of a foot in the door. Maybe you can, do some networking, whichever, while you're in there. And there's your opportunity, maybe you can get a couple more gigs out of it. I don't know. And I would do that every now and then. I'm trying to think of who else I would do it with. Just random people. I would just throw them in there, and yeah, it would be like a bunch of underground guys. And then you would notice like J-Rock from WCOIC.
Right.
he started throwing, they started Boogie Tribe throwing parties probably about a year after I started throwing underground parties. And when I had bumped into him, I was like, yo, J-Rock. I'm like, what are you doing here, bro? He was like, yeah, we're going to start throwing parties. And I was like, for real? He's like, yeah, we're going to do some underground parties. And I was like, cool. I'm like, hey, I'll throw you on a flyer. He's like, yeah, for sure. I'll throw you, whatever. And they vice versa. They threw me on one of their flyers and, whichever. And I was very supportive of them because, here's J-Rock, they were throwing alternative parties and they made the transition too. And they came over and they started throwing underground parties and they were very successful with their underground parties. Very. So yeah, that's how that started panning out. And like I said, here at senior year, junior year and senior year of high school, here I am looking at records, for like Daft Punk and stuff. I'm looking at these records and trying to find the phone number on there to call these guys and be like, I want to book these guys for a party. I was 17, 18 years old. I didn't know. Hey, let's see. There's a phone number on here for the record label. They can call that number and they can get the number for these guys and they can book them. And then, I would do that. I would look at like, a Hyperactive record and I'd look at the label and I called the number on there. Because we didn't have email and all that stuff. We did, but I mean, they were like green screen stuff, right?
Right.
And it was very limited. So all we had was a phone. And I want to say Bad Boy Bill, when I had bumped into him one time, was telling me that he worked with an agency and he was like, hey, call these people at this agency. They manage me right now. They started managing me. We got other DJs you might want to check out. And I was like, all right. So I called them and man, it was like calling the president. I couldn't get these people on the phone. I couldn't get them to talk to me. I couldn't, book somebody, they were just like, oh, he's booked. Click. Hey, how about this Friday? This Friday, the 29th. Oh, click, he's booked. Like literally, like they was move on to the next one. And I was like frustrated as a kid. I was like, man, how does this work? Like, how do I do this? And I had realized that these parties were being planned and promoted months in advance, like 2-3 months. And then I would call them and be like, hey, I got your number from Bad Boy Bill. I'm interested in DJ Irene. Well, what date? 3 months. Tell me what you got available in 3 months. What do you got for 3 months? And they would say, oh, we got available these Saturdays. All right, cool. I'll take this one. And then I would schedule my party around that. But then there was a problem. I would go to the party on the weekend and then I'd see all the promoters and be like, hey, are you throwing a party this day? Nah. Hey, are you throwing a party this day? Nah, I'm not throwing one. Because we did not, there was like an unspoken respect. I guess there was a mutual respect with all the underground promoters, and we communicated enough so that we did not throw parties against each other.
Right.
so that we could all have a fair.
Unfortunate promoters don't think that way, so it's too
Yeah,
bad.
you know, it's an old school thing that I learned, and I loved it because there was communication. And you know, I didn't want to throw a party against Lewisboro. You know,
Right.
hey, I got my flyers out. I just spent $5,000, and I get to the party to pass them out, and guess what? Lewis is passing out flyers too for the same day. Well, shit. Now I know that, you know, I'm up the creek now. You know, Lewis
Right.
is throws these banging ass parties. You know, and I'm still starting out. So I would communicate with everybody and just like, hey, you throwing a party? Yeah, yeah, check with Frankie. He might be throwing a party that day. Check with Frankie. No, nobody's throwing a party that day. Good to go. Fast forward. Let's throw the party. You know.
Right.
So that's how that started, and I met so many great people from that scene. I would never take it back at all. I would say that it's probably the best experience in my life, being able to meet as many people as I did, and it allowed me to travel the world and, you know, the nation. Also being a DJ at that time. Here I wasn't even graduated from high school, and I was, I think, senior year. I was on Fridays and Saturdays. I was flying out of Midway Airport. I lived in Midway Airport. Midway Airport was literally 5 minutes from my house. And the first time I got an out of town booking was Detroit. And my dad was like, you're going to play in Detroit? Who's driving you? I'm like, I'm not driving. Like, you bought me a plane ticket. He's like, you're going by yourself? He goes, no, somebody's got to go with you. He goes, maybe me and your mom will go with you. And I was just like, okay, but they didn't buy, he didn't buy a ticket for you guys. He just bought me a ticket. And my dad would call the promoter and be like, hey, you know, you bought him a ticket. Hey, yeah, Mr. Elizondo, you know, we're gonna, you know, have him. Well, we got him a hotel room. He's gonna come play. Da, da, da. And I was, at that point, I was sold even more. I mean, here I am, 17 years old, getting on a plane. My dad dropped me off in Midway Airport. I'm getting on the plane, and you know, I had to get an ID. I had my high school ID, and I had to get an actual legit Illinois ID. And here I am at the airport. I'm nervous. I'm getting on an airplane for the first time in myself. You know, with my records, right? Hey, you know what was even more nervous? Maybe me more nervous. You try and take your records to an airport for the first time in a metal case, and have them give you the third degree and asking you questions on what the hell is in that case.
Right.
Because I'd had the travel case, and I'd put it up to the metal detector, and they would, man, I could see them looking at the screen, moving it back and forth on the belt, looking at it, trying to figure out what it was. And they would pull me aside, and they, you know, the first time he pulled me aside, and he's like, what you got in here? I go, records. He's like, records. And I'm like, yeah, records. He's like, looks like film. I'm like, film? He's like, yeah, rolls of film. He goes, it looks like, is it rolls of film? I go, no, it's records. So I opened it up. That was when we could still put locks on stuff. So I had unlocked it, opened it up. They showed it to him, and they're like, the guys, you know, the guys who were inspecting it, they were like, wow, all right, where you going? You a DJ? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to DJ a party. I mean, here, right? I'm a kid, right? I'm getting on a plane with these records. I'm going to play in Detroit. And these guys are kind of looking at me kind of weird, like, all right, yeah, whatever. Got on the plane, got there, whichever. I mean, I was lost, man. I was a kid. Get off the plane to the airport. You know, I didn't know who was coming to pick me up. I didn't know what this guy looked like. It wasn't like now where, you know, we have Facebook, we can see people's faces, and, you know we can network and we can do a video call. Back then, all you had was a phone call. Oh yeah, I recognize the voice. You're the guy, you know?
Right. So
there was no guy standing with a sign, I'm here to pick up Threejay. You know, it was kind of, you got to figure it out.
And if I'm mistaken, Detroit was a very big underground scene, you know, and I remember even DJ Sneak was out there, you know, because of Canada and, you know, doing that as well. So I was a big, because if I'm not mistaken, the underground scene kind of where DJs gravitated to do producing music now. This was kind of the thing, right? Because they weren't just DJs, they were producing music.
Yeah, 100%. I'd say 90% of the DJs who were playing the underground were making music.
Right.
And they were killing it, every single one of them. And so yeah, Detroit, definitely one of the bigger underground towns around the United States, besides like LA, New York. Detroit definitely held their own with the underground parties, heavy on techno, and their parties, I'm going to tell you right now, they were a lot more grimy than our parties. You're talking about abandoned warehouses, no electricity. These guys are running generators.
Right. Right.
They had a guy in charge of filling the gas in the generator because there was no lights in the place. The first gig I took out there in Detroit, I had no idea, and I took a Halloween gig out there. And I got there the day before Halloween, Friday night, and I think that it was a Saturday that I was playing. Got there on Friday night late and met the guy at the airport. He picked me up. And he's like, "We got to hurry up and get you your hotel room." And I was like, "Well, why?" He's like, "Man, we got to hurry up." He goes, "It's going to get crazy out." He goes, "This is Detroit." And I was just like, "What's wrong with Detroit? Like, what's going on?" And he was like, "It's Devil's Night." And I'm like, "Devil's Night?" And I thought this guy's pulling my leg. I'm like, "Man, come on." And he's like, "It's Devil's Night." I guess the night before Halloween was called Devil's Night in Detroit, and people would go crazy. They would riot and loot and steal and all kinds of other stuff.
Right.
And I didn't believe them. And sure enough, man, the night of the party when they drove me there, this is old Detroit. This is 25 years ago now we're talking, right? Old Detroit. Driving out of the hotel, maybe about 15 minutes, pitch blackout. And now I'm moving from the window seat to the middle of the seat in the car. Like, dude, man, it's getting dark out here. Like, what the fuck? Where are we going? And sure enough, like, they took me to like this warehouse in the middle of nowhere, pitch black out there. One security guard with a flashlight flagging people at the door. And I was like, wow, like, this is some scary shit for real. Like, there's nobody out here. And I got out the car and you could hear the thumping, boom, 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 from the warehouse. And I was like, well, I know there's a party in there now for sure. And I got in there and boom, it was just like, you were in the Aragon, man. Freaking lights everywhere. You were just like, you walked out of the darkness into the freaking light, just like that. Yep. And there were thousands of people when they're partying. It's the first party I ever used turntables on something other than an actual table. They had turntables set up on a limousine. I guess they didn't have any tables or anything like that. And Terrence Parker was the guy who was playing before me. I had no idea who Terrence Parker was at the time. Terrence Parker was such a funny guy. He would go and throw a blend on, and then he'd go out to the crowd and he would dance. And then when the record would start to end, he'd run back and he'd start blending another one, throwing another record in, and then he'd go back onto the crowd and dance. And I'm like, man, this guy is a clown. What the hell is he doing? And I had no idea, but the guy was amazing. And I was like, I was like, hey, Terrence, I'm like, I want you to come to Chicago and do that for me, man. That is some awesome stuff. Like, I gotta see you do that for me. I want to see you throw a record and then run back into the crowd. And then maybe he'll get stuck in the crowd and he misses his blend or something. Like, I don't know, I got this, But it was crazy. And when that whole thing started with me taking flights out to play other places, it was a different world. I wish I would have listened a little bit more though, because all the DJs that I was booking for my parties in Chicago were telling me, Threejay, make music. Threejay, make music. Make music. And I was just like, what? Why? I'm DJing, man. I love DJing. DJing all over the place now. I ain't got to make no music. I'm DJing. And CZR told me, Paul Johnson told me, Hyperactive told me, yep. Everybody who I was friends with and was booking.
Well, because you were in a perfect position to be making music.
Yep.
And because of what you were doing, and that's how come CZR and Jess and all these guys, Rick Flores, Rick. Oh God, what's his name? He's playing. He's live streaming tonight too. All these guys were producing music. All these guys, all these, and it was just so much guys out there, especially in the underground scene. Everybody, man, I would not run into them because of the fact they were so busy in the studio.
Yeah.
And only if I happen to show up at a party and I see them, hey, what's up? How you doing? Hey, where you been? And they disappear for 6 days because they're in the studio for 6 days.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't understand it at all. And I was just like, I was young and I was having a lot of fun doing what I was doing. And I didn't really understand the long-term, advantage to doing that.
Right.
And it didn't hit me until like 2000. And Paul Johnson played a party for me and he said, I got to go. And I'm like, what do you mean you got to go? He's like, yeah, I'm going to the airport right now, flying out to Miami. And I'm like, what are you going to Miami for? Playing a gig? He's like, no, man. He's like, the music conference. Music conference is going to happen right now in Miami. He's like, you should go. He goes, a lot of networking there, man. And I talked to talk to everybody. A lot of the underground guys were half and half at the time. Most of the producers were going, a lot of promoters were not going. And, a lot of industry people were kind of going and whichever. And I was kind of like, well, what is this thing, So, I was friends in high school with Steve Smooth. And Steve Smooth, we were playing a lot of high school parties together, and, Smooth is actually one of the boys too. And I had bumped into him and I said, what's this thing everybody's talking about, man, this music conference? He's like, you got to go, bro. He's like, man, everybody's going to be there. He's like, you got to go and check it out. He goes, everybody, record labels, promoters, DJs, producers. He's like, everybody goes. And I was just like, what? This is how crazy I was back then. And it's being just a kid, just, whatever. So I had thrown a party. The party did okay. I didn't make, crazy amount of money, but it did okay. And I made a little bit enough money where I can leave the party. And my music conference started that Monday. It was Saturday. And the music conference started, I think, that Monday, which was 2 days away. I literally convinced my mom and my dad and said, I want to go, out there. I wasn't 21 yet. I was 19 or 20. And they were like, well, that's a long way to go and by yourself. And I said, oh, you know what? I'll get Sergio to go with me. And my buddy who lived down the street from me, he was older than me. And he's like, yeah, let's go. Fuck it. Let's go. And we paid for our plane tickets to get there. I said to get there. We paid our plane tickets to get there. We didn't plan about coming, we didn't buy a ticket coming back because we weren't thinking. We were just like, let's just get there and let's see what this is about. So we bought these plane tickets. We flew there. That whole plane experience was crazy too, man. We wound up getting put in first class with some famous golf guy. We wound up having champagne with him, whatever. And then the guy was like, well, what are you guys going there for? You guys are a bunch of young kids. What are you guys going, man? And we told him we're going to these music conferences, all these DJs and whatever. He's like, I didn't hear about it. I'm going for a tournament out there. And we were talking, and that guy's like, hey, let me get your number or, your pager number or whichever. I'll page you. And, I want to see where the party's at, when I finish. And we're like, what? So anyway, we go. We didn't even have a hotel room. We get there. I was like, we were like, where do we go? And I said, hey, Steve said they were staying at the whatchamacallit hotel over there on Collins. Let's go to that hotel and let's see if we can just get a room with them. And we went there and they're like, we're sold out. And I wound up bumping into other people in the lobby, like other DJs from like out of town and stuff. And they were just like, oh, go check this hotel, go check it. We wound up finding a hotel like all the way down Collins. Like we're walking down Collins with my record bag and my suitcase, and we're just dragging it all the way down Collins in freaking 90-degree humidity heat, sweating our asses off. And finally we got to a hotel, and it was probably one of the most rundown hotels on the strip. And this is Miami like 20 years ago, right? It wasn't as like it is now. Miami back then, they still had a lot of small old school hotels.
Right.
And they weren't renovated. They were barely,
I know.
I remember taking a shower and then the wall was moving and stuff when I was taking a shower. Like the walls were gonna fall. But we got a hotel room. We were excited and whichever, and we were just like, oh, we got a hotel, we got a place to sleep and whatever. And I was learning, I tried to go to the conference and they're like, you got to register. You got to do this.
Yep.
So here I go. I was throwing down money, I'll give me the badge. I'll take this, whatever, I'll do the panels. I'll do this. And
that wasn't cheap.
No,
that was not cheap at all. I think it was like $325 or $350 at the time.
I want to say it was like $500 because it was late. I paid.
Oh yeah, yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say it was $500 because I paid it at the door. It was late registration, right?
Right.
And Sergio didn't get one because he wasn't a DJ promoter or anything. He was just my friend. So he's like, man, I ain't buying that. He's like, I don't even have the money to buy it. I'm like, all right, cool. So I, got my badges, went to a couple panels. I thought they were interesting, marketing, promotion, record labels, and whichever. I thought they were interesting. And then I had wandered off to a pool party at that same location. And it was like Hollywood for like DJs and producers.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say Hollywood, like, I mean, I was running into like Richie Houghton. I was running into like Armand Van Helden. I went to a party at Gloria Stefan's building, and she was in the building. I didn't get to see her, but she was there. I actually seen her walking through the building, but I didn't get to meet her. And there was just all kinds of people there, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on here?"
And
so
that was at the Fontainebleau Hotel, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that was at the Fontainebleau because I was there.
Wait, okay.
I was there. I went to 18 different winter music conferences. So I've seen Steve Smooth there, seen Jess and Stina, all the guys. So trust me, I was there.
That was the first year I went. So that first year, DJ Jess, everybody, with Steve Smooth, JJ Flores, everybody was telling me, Threejay, make music. And I was just like, throwing the party, played another, few parties out of state. I was living the life.
Right.
And I went back to Miami the second year in a row. Now, this is where it got crazy. Now, I go out there and I'm with Louis Barrow. I'm with Reddick. I'm with, all the big time promoters from Chicago for the underground scene, and run into Steve Smooth and them at another party. Steve gives me a pass and says, yo, come to this party. It's the IHR exclusive party. It's sponsored by Sky Vodka. It's going to be cool. It's going to be free vodka, whatever.
Right.
So I go to this party. By far, this is the Hollywood of house music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, if you ever wanted to meet anybody in house music that was producing music or killing it on as a DJ, this is the party that you had to be at. I mean, I was meeting people like Azito the Bass. I was meeting, Mark Farina was there. I mean, it was just bananas and I was just like turning around everywhere, like, holy, wow, there's so-and-so, there's Sneak, and there's, and it was,
yep.
And here I am drinking free vodka the whole time. I was 21 then. The following year, I was 21, so I was able to drink. So It was free vodka, and we were just like pounding vodka. Everybody was just pounding. We were having an awesome, amazing time. And everybody I met, again, was like, Threejay, man, make music. Make music, giving me their cards, send me your music up, when you're ready, and, put on my record label, whichever. And I was just like, yeah. So then after that experience, I actually did go home and I started buying MPCs, keyboards, synthesizers, filter factories, all that stuff. I started, I said, all right, cool. I'm gonna start figuring this out. I had no idea what I was doing at MPC. I had to go call Danny the Wild Child and be like, Danny the Wild Child, how do I use this thing? I had to run over to his house. He was teaching me how to use it. Like I was taking classes.
Right.
And then I just never really fell through with it. I invested all the equipment. I want to say my MPC got stolen. And then I was just like, you know what? I'll just keep doing parties,
right.
whatever.
Right. And I did exactly the same thing. I bought equipment, and then I think it was like a 3-year stint, and then it was just, you know what, it's not what I want to do. So you know, you either catch on it like water to fish, or you just don't. You know, it's just like, and I think a lot of people, they caught on
Yeah.
it like water fish, and then it became like a more of an obsession for them. I was, you know, and I kind of did the same thing. I bought my 909. I had the Juno 101. I was doing everything. I had Alphatron, and I was doing the MIDI, doing all this stuff. I figured it out and stuff like that. I actually made 2 tracks, but at the day, it wasn't like, honestly, it was like, man, this is too much work.
It was.
It was too much work. I didn't want, you know, and it just felt like it took away from what I really love doing. You know,
Right.
I think that's what it was, and that's why I didn't make the music. I'm sure you had the same feeling where it just, you know, it's taken away from what I want to do, which is to throw parties, and you know, that's
Yeah. And I kind of looked at it like, you know, well, I was already DJing everywhere and DJing, you know, whatever.
Mhm.
You know, making music wasn't a huge factor. You know, it wasn't like like I got to do this or else I'm not going to, play another party or anything like that, because I was already playing parties.
Right.
But I didn't understand what the guys were telling me was, if you want to have longevity and you want to, be a DJ producer, whatever, you got to make music. You got to, man. And I wish I would have just buckled down and made it when they were telling me, because I'd be in a way different place now with music.
Right.
And
Well, I mean, you know, I think it goes, you know, I would hate to say that that's where you could have, would have, should have, because you don't know if that would have been the, you know, if you would have been ultra successful or not, you know, because not everybody that does in the music is successful, and they're not, you know, we just don't know if that's the way the chips fall. You
right,
know, it's, it,
100%.
it's you know, I know in hindsight you would say like what would like it is today and stuff like that. If I could say that, you know, if I listen to, you know, and give you a perfect example, when I made mixtapes and CDs, if I would have known about the mixtapes and CD business and would have did this, but you know, going into that scene or doing that and selling as many as I did, that I you know, it just happened. You know,
Right,
that nothing was planned and stuff like that. And I think that goes to anything else that happens in your career of DJing. You know, I think we all can say yes. In hindsight, if we would have looked at it differently, if let's say if we knew now, if we knew then what we know now, yes, of course, but that's never going to be the case. And you know, even to today, what's going on with everything else that's happening right now in the industry and the
yeah,
scene and stuff like that, there's I I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or, you know, in the future now because of what's going on here. Nobody planned for this.
yeah,
You
right.
know, you
you know
know?
I, that's a good conversation, because I've actually had to talk about that a few times with people, and they came to me with questions, like I had the answer, and I'm just so, best advice I ever got about that whole thing is just, when I started producing music again like 5 years ago, the first record label to pick me up said, oh, you're friends with Paul Anthony and you're friends with, like, you go way back with these guys, you know all these guys. I'm like, yeah, they're all my boys. Like, I've known these guys for 20 years.
Like,
And I was just like, I never, whatever. And they're just like, hey, no excuses. Timing is sometimes timing. Everybody has their time. Sometimes people get it done, they start earlier. Sometimes people start later. He's like, but just be happy that you got started and you actually are, starting to do things. He's like, because some people never get the opportunity to actually get started. He's like, at
right,
least you're starting and you're doing something good. But everybody has their time,
right,
in place in life. And he's like, maybe this is your time.
right,
And I was like, I could accept that. That's pretty cool. I appreciate that. But like you were saying, the world we're in right now, this whole situation. I had an event a couple months ago, or back in March, And a lot of DJs were calling me for the event. You know, they were want to DJ, and they're like, "Yo, is this going to happen?" I'm like, "Yeah, so far it's good. We're good to go." You know, I haven't heard anything. You know, anything changes or anything like that. Well, when they put the kibosh and said no events, this, that, whatever, well, then I had no choice but to postpone the event. And DJs and other people were calling me and were like, "Yo, what do we do?" Other promoters were calling me too, like, "What do we do?" And I was just like, "Yo, man, I have no idea," because out of the 25 years that I've been doing events, I've never had a situation like this where we'd have to deal with a
Nope,
sickness or anything like that.
nobody.
No, and no,
Because
and like I told people, listen, nobody out there is prepared. I've seen a lot of shit in the events that I've done. I've lost venues the day of my party, and I've had to recoup. I've you know, had a lot of situations happen with events where I had to improvise and make things happen. And
correct.
that's what made me stronger over the years, is because now when I plan events and these things happen, I'm like, all right, well, this is what we're gonna do. And
Right.
I do it with, you know, with my eyes closed, you know, like I've been through this before. Like this is nothing new. Like, we sound system went out, okay, don't worry about it. Where's the breaker at? Or, you know, stuff like that. You know, you learn everything. But this is one of those different type situations where nobody has the answer. You know, as much as I would love to have the events and whichever, I don't know a real timeline on when they're going to let us do this stuff and when it's going to be safe for us to do it. And like I told the DJs, we're dealing with something new here. And this is something I've never encountered before. And it's kind of scary because we don't know where to go. We don't know what to do and how to
Well,
handle it.
well, I think the most scary part again goes back to the unknown. That's the most scary part because we don't know if this is going to be. Right now, we're in 3 months, right? We don't know if this is going to be 6 months, 9 months, a year, or even 2 years. You know, and there's scary talk about 2 years. I don't know about you, but I don't know how we're gonna survive in 2 years. You know, in 2 years of doing absolute. You know, that's and then people say, "Oh, get a real job." You know, I'm like, no, this is our job. This is our passion. This is what we do. That's like, I mean, as it says, you know, and I understand perfectly. Some people say get a real job, but you know, not even people with real jobs are doing it too.
Right. Right.
You know, if and you call them essential workers and stuff like that, and I get that, but even that we don't even know because here comes August, September, we don't know what's going to happen with the second wave they're talking about. If that means another shutdown, another, we don't, there's nothing for sure, you
Yeah.
know, as
And
far as
you're 100% right. I mean, first of all, we've never encountered anything like this, and we don't have any real timeline. And, you know, sure, go out and get a real job. Sure. I mean, the unemployment numbers are through the roof right now. Where are you going to go get a job? You know,
right,
jobs are limited right now, you know, for, you know, people who want to go out and get a different type of job. And not only that, but a guy like yourself or me, if you're involved with the entertainment industry for 20 odd years or 15 years, and you have this career, you know, it's like a salesman. If the salesman's successful for 30 years and then you tell him, hey, you know what, you're going to go be a work at the zoo and be a lion trainer. I mean, the guy's going to be like, what? Like, I don't know what a lion, I don't know how to train a lion. I
no,
sell cars. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
you can't just have one extreme to the other and expect people just, you know, it's
No,
crazy.
I think it for us, um, because we do have for instance, personally, I think with this whole thing, as many people has followed me, there's a responsibility to my customers as well. They rely on me like they're like, and I don't mean this literally, but I'm like the other doctor in their life, because I'm providing, the other aspects of their well-being,
Right.
and being a dancing, the music, and being, able, and by no means am I saving anybody's life, but I'm what I mean is by the other doctor in their life, because I have created this culture of people able to deal with the everyday life of what you call it. So hence, here's a doctor, and guess what? You get sick and you get a flu shot and blah blah blah, and you're going this way. Or you're uh, this person in your life, you go to different things for why to do daily lives. And I think, like, for me, it's I have a responsibility to those people that are out there, you know, just because something happened to my fact of living per se, do I cut the rug out from underneath them too? I can't give up that easily. It's
Yeah,
not.
right. Exactly.
And I think that's, and you have a culture that follows you. I have a culture that follows. We have cultures that follow us, and think about that. Cultures that follow us.
Yeah.
That's a different thing than just saying, oh yeah, you got people that like us when people follow us and stuff like that. No, man, you have a culture. You built a family, and you built just everybody. And I think that's, some people don't understand it. Some people, and I give George Ortega a lot of credit when he said, we as promoter live a different mentality in this business. Because like you said, you've had the experience where we're throwing different things at us, and we fix things that are broken. We fix things that are not right whenever we're doing these events and so forth. Or we're always planning ahead of time, 3 months, 6 months ahead of time, trying to anticipate any of these stuff. So as a promoter slash events coordinator, I think we figure ways that nobody else figures ways of doing things.
Yeah, right.
So I think that's an advantage I think we have over everything else that's going on there, especially because of what's going on right now. I think we're going to figure little things out to figure, you know what? Maybe maybe I won't be able to run, but I can crawl first and figure it out.
It's exactly what I've been doing for the past couple months, is actually trying to figure out how I can crawl a little bit with some events and so on and so forth, and how we can keep it safe, and how we can do it where, when I do events now, I'm an adult, right? I'm 40 years old, and I got a lot of responsibilities, and I have a responsibility for people out there. And there's no way in hell I'm going to throw a party and put people in jeopardy and pack a house and get people sick and feel I would never be able to live with myself with the guilt, knowing that people got, a super spreader, 50 people got sick from the party out of, 800. 50 people is a lot of people, because those 50 people will get 50 more people sick, and so on and so forth. And we're in a really bad, position. I don't want to be that guy. And money is not, for me. Yeah, sure, money is good. Everybody needs to make money, but
yeah, we love making good money.
but not at the cost of people's health and
right.
Losing people. And I respect people way too much, and that's with any event. For me, safety is always the first thing, always, when I do events, and that's festivals, whatever. Security's there. We have this in plan, so on and so forth. I want to make sure that people feel comfortable coming to our events, and that people will be there because they know, hey, it's always a good time. There's never any bullshit. And, Threejay tries to look out for everybody. And that's part of my responsibility. I got to make sure that everybody's going to be cool.
And you build a good rapport with people, your clientele, your culture, your family that you, and I call it the secondary family, because you know what, I remember, just on a side note, just like when my mom passed away, my God, the people who actually sent my mom flowers and stuff like that, those were all people that were, part of my customers and stuff like that. And I just found it amazing, that people genuinely care, about you, even though it's just, you're a promoter, you're a DJ and stuff like that, but people really care about you. And, and thank you to all the customers that are out there that do that. They're naturally concerned, and they because we've always looked out for them. I've seen some just recent videos and postings of people throwing parties right now, and there's no social distancing, there's no nothing. There's a group of 100 people that are there, and they're all doing, like nothing was caught. And, and of course, I get the messages and I get, hey, man, look what this person's doing, and I'm like, ooh, well, we'll see what happens in 2 weeks, 3 weeks when, this becomes, an issue, and the venue is going to become the issue. And,
that's the other thing is that, I guess a lot of people, it's what they believe right now. They think this thing is a hoax. They think it's fake, so on and so forth. This is a sickness only for the seniors, or this is a sickness only for people with underlying conditions, and so forth, so on and so forth. And we've only gotten, 1 million people that have died in the United States out of billions. So it's a very low percentage. And, there's a lot of different ideas, factors, thoughts, and people's beliefs when it comes to it. And to be honest with you, I'm cool with being public and saying that, I do the social distancing thing. And if I do an event, it's going to be a social distance type of event, because I just don't want it on my conscience. And I want to see the better well-being of everybody. I don't want to take the risk of getting more sick and, whatever. What if it's not a hoax? And what if it's not all the other stuff that people are saying? And what if it's not a government thing? And what if it's real? What if, you're still, you have to put in consideration that there's this many people that have died with us going into quarantine for months. And there were still this many people that died and got sick. So if we did a free-for-all thing and everybody just went crazy and started throwing parties with thousands of people again, and no social distancing, no masks and whatever, I think we're leading ourselves into a really bad place.
well, I like to use examples. Hey, just because I walked out of my door and I didn't get shot doesn't mean that if I hear shots, that means I don't duck.
Hey, I'm from the South Side, man. We're the same way. Hey, just because you walk out the door today and you heard the gunshot, you didn't get shot, don't mean nothing, because you can walk back in the door and pow, somebody's gonna shoot you right. It's crazy like that. Right. Russian roulette, right? It's roulette. It's literally roulette. Spin the wheel, and hopefully, it doesn't land on your number.
Yep, and I don't think I want to play with anybody. I as I tell people, I want to err on the side of caution. That's it. That's all. I'm not going to try to interfere in anybody's beliefs. Just want to err on the side of caution. So if we get together as a group, please just I know eventually there's going to be a bubble that opens up bigger, that people are going to be able to do this, and I agree with it. But that's just what 100 people overnight doesn't mean the bubble is broken.
Right, exactly.
That's not let's say they do the event and there were 100 people there and they did social distancing, and then you see, they did the surgery, the gloves and stuff, and then the next week you see 100 people, maybe half of them didn't have it. I can say, okay, you know what? They're getting a little comfortable, and then the 3/4, then, as the weeks go on, you would see, look at, nobody's getting sick. Okay, look at it. It's like, I could see that happening, but not the first night, and nobody is, the gloves, mask, nothing.
They just jumped off the edge with that one.
That was just like, I was just shocked. I was like, oh, but you know what? That's them. What I'm gonna do is something socially responsible, and that's maybe that's the word we need to.
That's a pretty. I just thought about that. That's pretty cool. That's a social. This is a social responsible. And that's cool.
That may be the new word we need to talk about: social responsibility instead of social distancing. Because I think this is. I think we all kind of know. Everybody knows the distant aspect. I don't think we need that anymore. I think we all know. Just being responsible for each other and being social responsible, and I think that has, even before this COVID, when people got sick, they told you, hey, you're sick, stay home, wash your hands. That was always being social responsible. But I think people didn't, let's be honest with you, when it came to influenza, 50,000 people died 2 years ago. that wasn't being social responsible. That was so that this is kind of put a big flash on the fact that this has gotten out of the hand, and
Right.
I think this is why it's gotten out of hand, because a lot of people weren't socially responsible with other
Yeah,
people as far as
for sure. For sure.
it's 9:30. We've been talking for almost 2 hours. Unfortunately, this is gonna be I know it goes by quick, and there's a lot to talk about.
All right,
Um,
bathroom break. We'll come back.
so anything you want to say to the people listening, or people that have been listening, as far
Um,
as with
yeah, I
you?
mean, there's a lot to say. I mean, I wish the interview can go on forever. There's tons of things for me to talk about. I think a lot of people would agree that know me and who have known me as far as DJs, producers, people who have attended my events, whichever, that I probably have a lot of background stories to tell about many different situations, people, DJs, experiences, and whichever. And at the end of the day, I really just want to thank everybody out there over the past 25 years, for letting me be me and letting me do these events and be a DJ and a producer and a remixer, and a friend, and a business partner, and everything else that I do. I've built a lot of really great relationships with people across the world and in different industries, not only here in Chicago but everywhere else. A lot of long-lasting relationships and friendships in the business and the industry, and it keeps going. Good people keep introducing me to good people, and it just keeps going. And I would never be able to do it without the help of everybody out there, embracing me, as a person, a DJ, promoter, and saying that I do good things, and that I make good music, and that I do good parties. It's very hard to stay consistent, and keep doing what I'm doing. And there's a lot of times I wanted to throw in the towel and just say, what, I'm so tired of this. I can't do it again, whichever. And I'll be honest, this 2020 was going to be my last year, and I thought about it and said, what, I'm over. I don't want to do any more events, whichever. I'm just going to make music. And then somebody, said, "Hey, Threejay, it's your 25-year anniversary for Underground Element." And I said, "It is?" And they said, "Yeah, it is." And I was like, 2020? And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, we got to celebrate. We got to, we got to throw an anniversary party. Let's celebrate. You know what? Let's not do an anniversary party. Let's throw a series of festivals and events and call them all part of this yearly celebration."
Right.
And then 2020 happened, and they pulled the plug and said, and I said, "All right, why can't we celebrate the anniversary next year?" But no, overall, man, seriously, everybody, there's too many people to mention. First, thank you for bringing me on the show, having me give this opportunity. It was a great conversation. Would love to do it again, or whatever. We can talk about different stuff. You're in the industry, I'm in the industry. We have millions of stories, I'm sure. But I wanted to say a special thank you to the people who are closest to me in the industry, who have helped me grow. DJ7, obviously, he got me a good start. CZR, really good friend of mine, as far as producing music. He's helped me get through some tough times with producing music and understanding the producer end of being an artist. I've called him with plenty of questions and help. DJ Jess has been there with me for a long time. My guys, DJ Skip, Steve So Curly from SNS Records, they really did give me my first break with releasing music, and they stood behind me and supported me and pushed me 110%. And I'll always be grateful to them.
I love Shannon. He's a cool guy.
Man, those are my guys, and I'll be honest, man, those guys really did, give me the big push, and I'm so grateful for it. My boy Patrick Wayne, Spinning Chewy, we did it back in the day, man. I mean, Gino Rock and Romo is like an older brother to me. I mean, like I said, the list can go on and on and on and on and on. But overall, I want to say thank you to every single person who has ever believed in me, helped me, and whichever, man. It's amazing, and I feel blessed 100%.
Well, that's why I want, that's why I do the show. because I want people to hear your story, and and I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't know your history, your background, and stuff like. They probably heard your name, but they
Right.
didn't know they didn't really, that unless they're into the underground scene. But I figured that this is, when Chewy told me, I says, yeah, absolutely. Hey man, this is something that's part of music history. A lot of people don't understand that underground music is a big part of the Chicago dance scene. It's huge. It isn't just the Latin side or the commercial pop side, or
Yeah.
it's the freestyle side. There is that market out there, and that's big as well. So I
Yeah.
agree. I agree, and especially, I mean, and the side note, for me, underground music was for me kind of the bridge when it came to the gay scene, and when it was, because I remember the Boom Boom Room, and the different varieties of the Boom Boom Room, and that was very underground, and that a lot of DJs, were producing music and stuff like that. A lot of the Chicago house DJs were producing music, and that was where they got their, they played a song, and that was it. It was like from anybody, we would see that, they, here you go, here's the gay scene, and you play a song and it's underground, and they would be like, oh my God, it's the best.
Yeah.
And it metamorphosized into a bigger culture of it, and hence, and we know that's why I call it the Boom Boom Room, because I remember that's where a lot of music was discovered, and
Yeah.
that was early 2000 / the Winter Music Conference aspect of it. And if you go to the Winter Music Conference, those guys were playing everywhere, all over Ibiza, you name it. They were going, and hence, look at today, we have DJ Tiesto, DJ Zed, and all these guys that are making millions of dollars doing this business. And
Yeah.
because they're producing, and there's the bigger picture of this whole scene.
Yeah.
We're the small factor. We're
Yeah, right.
just, so that's, I just wanted to say, that I don't want misunderstand. The underground music reached everybody. It really
Yeah,
did.
for sure. And I think, I guess that could be our second show. I only got up to year 2000. We're in 2020, so we got 20 more years to talk about. But
Right,
I mean, I think 100%. I mean, we only talked about up to year 2000, really, whichever. And I think there's another side of the story of how I went from, commercial UC parties to the underground parties, and then emerging again and creating festivals like the St. Richard's House Music Festival, the Cicero House.
Right. So yeah, definitely. So we'll bring you back on. I'll set up another date for you, and then we'll bring it on, because I bring guys on. Jess, I brought back on. Martin Boogeyman, I brought back on. Hey, you got story to tell. I want people to listen to it. That's
I think
absolutely.
People have asked me a lot of different questions like that about just. There's not enough time, right?
Right. But I mean, and at the same time, I want to make sure that everybody is, we captured that audience, because hour and a half of talking on about a subject. I know people sometimes get zoned out. That's just the way it is, and I don't want it to be the point where it's like, oh yeah, 3.5 hours of this. Yes, we got 3.5 hours to talk about. We got a lot of things, and I'm not gonna, and I know I rather keep it the quality more about what we're talking about. And then guess what? We're going to do a part 2. And that's exactly what Pablo, same thing with Pablo, same thing with Martin Boogeyman, DJ Jess, and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that, so many stories. But let's go ahead and set up another date, and then we'll talk about 2000 to present.
Okay, no, that's cool for sure. Let's do it. I appreciate it very much, man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for showing up.
Yeah, thank you everybody for showing up and watching.